Hello everyone, I'm Vivi and welcome to a Sly Cooper video. I really hope you enjoy this one. Stay tuned. The whole premise of this series is about one boy who grew up to follow the legacy of his family. One legacy which has been passed down from one generation to another. As per this boy's words, Sly Cooper we're talking about. In the very first game, this is what he explained. I come from a long line of master thieves who kept their secrets of sneaking and stealing in an ancient book, the Thievius Raccoonus. Anyone who read it learned to be especially sneaky. In the third entry of the series, Sly explains that it was supposed to be next in line. Born into a family of master thieves that went back through generations, I was next in line to continue the Cooper name. He later explained that fate had different plans. How his parents were murdered right in front of him, being robbed of his childhood. Sly without his parents in the picture meant that he had no one to really look up to as he grew. If Sly believed he was next in line, he didn't have a mentor. In other words, he didn't have his father to guide him. Presumably the one who was going to introduce Sly to their thieving legacy. We are unsure if Sly was the only Cooper child who's gained experience and the confidence to become a master thief without a father. What makes us unsure? Well, Clockwork. As per Sly's words in the second game, Clockwork was a monster. Sly was baffled, believing that a person like Clockwork had the express intention to wipe out his family line through generations. Clockwork lived on for hundreds of years through a steady diet of jealousy and hate. For someone to have genuine hate to feed that hate chip of theirs, it meant a Cooper had to be alive. Without a Cooper, Clockwork wouldn't express genuine hatred, therefore ending his life cycle as a machine. Such theory tells us that perhaps Sly wasn't the only one who grew up to become a master without a parent. If such theory is true, then the Thievius Raccoonus is certainly what Sly proclaimed it to be while facing Clockwork, that it takes a Cooper to create the Thievius Raccoonus, not the other way around. Here's the main thing. Those were Sly's words. Those words were a result of his own experience becoming a thief while also befriending Murray and Bentley at the orphanage. That notion of his is probably not something every Cooper ancestor had thought of. We just don't know the full story of those people in his family line. But what we do know, the moves of his ancestors originated from those respective ancestors. The Thievius Raccoonus, which Sly believes to have been passed down from generation to generation, most likely a story told from his father when he was just a child, well, the book itself, it's born from somewhere. The fact the book even exists means that Cooper ancestors had the power to write their own story, their own experiences, their own knowledge. Heck, the fact we had information on Clockwork's parts just goes to show what type of knowledge they were able to acquire. Yes, there are cases where we learn moves thanks to the book. Sly himself states that he used techniques that his ancestors taught him. But the whole nature of the book itself stems from every ancestor's personal stories and experiences. Those moves in the book were all self-taught and then later written down. That's what we like to believe. Like Sly explained to Clockwork, it takes a Cooper to create such a book. Yes, one can learn a few tricks, or perhaps many, but the fact the book and its content even exists, that's how we know it takes a Cooper to give creation to a book such as the Thievius Raccoonus. Sly's belief of fate having different plans for him as a kid, well, it still brought him to where he is today. He not only turned out to be a master thief, but made lifelong friends who always remained by his side, even after hitting certain bumps on the road. The Thievius Raccoonus is not just a book used to record thieving techniques, but it's also a book that tells a story, at least in Sly's case. At the end of the first game, Sly believed it was his time to chronicle his own adventures, not just for him, but for those who share a deep connection to him. A perfect example of this, we have Bentley, who is seen writing his own part in the Thievius Raccoonus, looking back at the third game. With everything that's happened throughout the life of Sly Cooper, he's soon going to be in a position where he has to make a choice. A choice which could impact the next generation. Not will. Could is the keyword here. Yes, Sly will undoubtedly reach a point in his life wondering what's the right thing to do for his own child. What's the right starting point for the next possible generation? This is why I said could instead of will when it comes to the impact this might cause. Sly just cannot control the next big possible generation. He simply doesn't have that power. He does, however, have the power to either kickstart a new legacy or end it. Hence the title of the video. Will Sly Cooper's legacy end or continue? Is the finale of the Thievius Raccoonus on the horizon? Sure, Sly has been chronicling all his adventures with his friends and Carmelita, but considering that the book has taught Cooper ancestors a trick or two, means that the ancestors, at least a good significant number of them, made sure to keep their legacy alive. Will Sly want to keep his family legacy alive? In other words, would Sly pass down his knowledge of being a thief in the book to his child? Surely, we could expect Sly telling the tales of the Thievius Raccoonus at some point, but ultimately, I believe Sly is a character who wouldn't try to impose the legacy he's retained onto his child. Whatever his child wants to do, I believe Sly will accept it, unless, of course, he or she decides to become a full-on criminal. Sly, let's not forget, has also a potential dilemma to deal with. The same goes to Carmelita. Assuming these two get married and bear a child together, Sly will have to decide if continuing the legacy and marrying an agent of Interpol is the right choice to make. Same goes for Carmelita. What's her whole perspective on this? The only thing she's come into terms with so far is what we have in Sly 4, that Sly fights for justice on the opposite side of the law. What's too evident at this point? These two have clearly, deeply fallen for one another. Hence why I discuss this potential future dilemma between these two. One question I get a lot, just what will Sly write in the Thievius Raccoonus? What technique will he write? What, sliding on lasers? I mean, if you think about it, that's another example of how a Cooper can create a book such as the Thievius Raccoonus. Sliding on lasers wasn't written in the book. Sly learned it himself, and was something his father also knew, just looking back at this scene. So as I was saying, it's not his adventures we're simply talking about. What technique will he write? Here's the thing. Sly doesn't have the obligation to do so. It's his life. Let's face it, it's his own personal experiences. The Thievius Raccoonus exists because his ancestors decided to write down their technique, simply in the hopes that another Cooper in line would utilize their technique. Sly's built a great number of connections with people. Sly could be the very first Cooper to have achieved such a great feat. The Thievius Raccoonus doesn't need any more techniques. One from Sly's side, for that matter. Whatever gets written down in the book is through sheer will. I could imagine Sly writing whatever lesson he's learned throughout his experience. One could be how having people who believe in you or who are close to you, how they can have a positive impact on your life. The connection you've built with those people, it can help define who you are. In this case, Sly grew up without parents. He is here now thanks to the deep emotional connection he's built with his friends, Murray and Bentley. He deeply cares for them and respects his friends. As he said in the third game, we're a team, we're a family, we should do this together. Something like, it doesn't just take skills to become a master thief, it also takes the courage to fight for the people you care about. Yeah, that's just something I came up with, something along those lines. That sort of lesson Sly would write in the Thievius Raccoonus, well, it also sounds like a goodbye, like a finale to the book's saga. Would you imagine Sly writing the last chapter of the book? Look, a twist that could happen in the future of the series? Sly doesn't necessarily end the Thievius Raccoonus, but he loses the Thievius Raccoonus. and for good this time. Not pages disappearing, but the whole book itself. Say a villain stumbles upon the book and decides to literally burn the book to ashes right in front of Sly. How or when they acquired the book? Who knows, it's up in the air. But if a scenario like this ever happens, we're not really sure what reaction we'd expect from Sly. Now thinking about it, well, Bentley perhaps made a backup somewhere. Well, apart from that, should we expect Sly, if this were to ever occur, should we expect him to get mad? Or simply be shocked and then later realize it's just a book? Just a book? From what we've gathered from the series, Sly makes sure the book is in safe hands. That's the extent he believes the book is important. But if he were to lose it, would he think back to his own word that a Cooper is what it takes to keep a legacy going? Or would he suddenly get overwhelmed by what he currently just witnessed? Naturally, it's going to trigger something. But is it going to trigger to an extent where Sly starts making poor decisions? Or will he learn from it and adapt after all the experience he's gained? The latter is what I lean more towards. And at the end of the day, Sly could realize that book or no book, his child can pursue whatever he or she desires. As for the future generation, say his great-grandson or great-granddaughter, so on and so forth, he can't really control what happens in the late future. These are certainly things that have so much story potential. All these small things can lead to some fantastic storytelling. And with that being said, folks, this is it for the video. So as usual, feel free to share your own theories in the comment section below. Do you ever feel like Sly's legacy will come to an end, especially by his own hands? What do you think? We'll leave it all in the comments. And as always, I've been Vivi, and thank you so much for watching.